Hello everyone, this is Whiskeyjack from the Insecure Gaming channel, and here are my thoughts on Tyranny. So Tyranny is Paradox's latest CRPG title, developed by Obsidian, following in the footsteps of Pillars of Eternity. I'll try not to go into any story details, as it is a huge, if not the most important part of the game. Tyranny is heavily influenced by pen and paper RPG games, especially the first part of the game you see when you start a new game, the conquest part. After the kind of limited character creation, the first part of the game you will experience is conquest. You are presented with choices for your newly created character that will affect your later gameplay and interaction with the various NPC characters and your main quest experience. The decisions you make during the conquest and later on in the game are actually very meaningful and hugely affect the main storyline, which for me is by far the best part of Tyranny. The story is far from generic and very dark at times, which I absolutely loved. And I mean truly dark. Unfortunately, I can't really spoil anything, so if you haven't played the game yet, you should trust me on that. There is no black and white, good and evil. Almost everything is, let's say, a gray moral area. A few times you will think an answer or response is really obvious, but you will be surprised by the consequence of your choice. A great care and effort has been made to write a good story and enrich it with lots and lots of lore to make the world as immersive and expansive as possible, which unfortunately can be tiresome to go through all of it, but more on that later. You could really go deep in this aspect of the game, but I don't want to spoil anything, and honestly, I think it would be better if the players simply experience some of those things without any prior knowledge. In terms of game mechanics and combat, Tyranny is pretty basic, and I think all RPG veterans will be comfortable with it. But some small deviations from classic CRPG combat do exist. In character creation, you will choose some basic aspects for your character, but not his class per se. Since you really have no class, you can pretty much do whatever you want depending on how you distribute your attributes. The leveling system is very reminiscent of Elder Scrolls games. For example, if you use one-handed weapons, you level up your one-handed weapon skill. If you use fire magic, you level up your control fire skill, and so on. A very nice twist in your character skills and progression is that depending on your reputation with factions and your companions, which you can check on the reputation menu, you can either have fear or favor, which each of those, when progressed enough, will unlock you specific skills. Also, artifact type weapons have their very own special skills you can use. Your companions, on the other hand, are locked into their class with slight variation between skill trees. You are still not forced to have an obviously tanky companion to be a tank, but his efficiency would be greatly reduced. Also, they offer some really nice conversations and are really well fleshed out, and they don't feel like your inventory mules or heal spammers. They have personality. Also, the companion AI is surprisingly decent. Of course, the efficiency of your party isn't even close to what it can be if you actually micromanage and issue orders yourself. That said, you can actually choose to have no companions at all and go solo the whole game, which I would not recommend on higher difficulties because it might become impossible to progress with certain very tough battles. Combat in Tyranny is, let's say for the non-initiated in this type of game, turn-based. Much like in Pillars of Eternity or more mainstream games like Dragon Age, you will pause in combat to issue commands to your party. Especially in higher difficulties where micromanaging everything is pretty much a must. A feature that I found absolutely amazing are the companion combo skills. You can do them once per encounter and only with your companion and yourself, and they are very powerful. You can also unlock more combo skills later on depending on your reputation with your companions. Sometimes fights feel Very unfair, but they are not. You just have to use the correct tactics for each type of enemy and engagement, even the correct type of items and armor and weapons. Proper use of terrain will also greatly help in tough fights. For example, if you are facing 8 or 9 enemies, you can back away, find a choke point, and take them on one by one. One of the best features of the game, for me at least, is spell creation. When discovering or buying certain scrolls, you will be able to create your very own custom spells through the spell creation menu. There is the core of spells, which is, let's say, its main aspect, the expressions, which determine the range and type of range of the spell, and the accents, which are basically buffs, and the power of the spells is limited by your lore skill. You can spend a lot of time creating a bunch of spells, and honestly, it's quite fun. All that said, Tyranny has some serious flaws in my opinion. The biggest one I think is that classes, let's call them that, or I should say better, combat disciplines, are extremely unbalanced. Any type of melee combat based character will have a very hard time, especially early in the game. Melee damage is a bit low, with the exception of two-handed weapons, but they miss quite a bit, at least in my experience of the game. And anything other than light or light medium combination of armor is simply not worth it. Heavy armor offers no real extra survivability and makes your character extremely slow. Movement, attack speed, and skill spell cooldown are all affected. That makes spellcasters the absolute go-to for efficient combat, and the mages are so good that on normal difficulty the game becomes extremely easy. You can just breeze through your enemies after a point. Also, pathing of characters can be really bad at times as well. Your party separating for no reason, an NPC or your own character even getting stuck somewhere on the other side of the map, accidentally bottlenecking your own party, stepping on traps you have already spotted, and more things like that. The loading times are also horrendous. A newly launched game has taken a full 2, maybe even 3 minutes of loading screen to get into the game, and even moving through different areas of the game can sometimes take way too long. Also, for some reason, Tyranny hogged a lot of resources in my machine and spiked temperatures a lot, even though it really shouldn't, as much more demanding games don't have the same impact on my CPU and graphics card. The ridiculous amount of text can also turn off a few people, although I believe the audience that Tyranny appeals to will love the walls of text and lore. But even I got a bit sick of it at points, and I love reading stuff about lore. It was mostly when you just want to progress further into the game, and some characters just ramble on and you read walls of text that do not really add anything critical other than simply flavor text. Finally, without wanting to spoil anything about how the game ends, let's say it ends abruptly. All of a sudden, you get an end screen that I personally really did not expect at that point. It leaves a ton of things unanswered, and it was not sufficiently fulfilling in my opinion. It might tease some sort of sequel game, but I got the feeling that the ending was rushed to meet the release date, because in the end, depending on what you did in the game, you get a conclusion of some storylines and your actions in the form of, you guessed it, text, that contradict each other quite a bit, and some of them were quite confusing, to be honest. All in all, Tyranny is a great game that could be one of the best CRPGs I have ever played. But at certain points after the ending of Act 2, the game feels a bit rushed, a bit not very polished. But it is one of the few games that your actions truly and deeply matter in the main storyline and the way the world and the NPCs respond to you, taking you down completely different avenues in each playthrough. Despite its flaws, I was completely immersed in the world and the lore, and I did 3 different playthroughs, each about 25 to 30 hours, because the game just begs you to play it again and again and try different paths. Despite its unsatisfying end, Although, if you want a challenge, I would recommend to not play as a mage type character. I believe that every RPG and pen and paper RPG fan will absolutely love it, and you should play the game. For more casual players, it might not be their cup of tea, but that said, I still recommend that you check it out because it's really, really good. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please share, subscribe, and leave your comments.